Hello and welcome to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Rachael is a speaker, inspirational author, and an overcomer. As Rachael is walking through her own journey of grief, she's challenging others to persevere and overcome their own circumstances. Find out more at rachaelflick.com. Here now is your host, Rachael Flick.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Hopecast. I'm excited to share my guest with you, Dr. Tim Clinton, co-author of the new book, Take It Back, Reclaiming Biblical Masculinity, The Heart and Strength of Being a Man. Dr. Clinton is also the president of the American Association of Christian Counselors, the AACC, the largest and most diverse Christian counseling association in the world. He serves as the executive director of the James Dobson Family Institute and recurring co-host of Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk, heard on nearly 1,300 radio outlets daily. Welcome, Dr. Clinton. I'm so glad to have you.
Rachel, thank you for having me. I really look forward to this.
Same. I mean, after you bumped me for the V POTUS to go see Pence, I've been wanting to make it up ever since.
Well, hey, I've been praying. We've got a fun topic today. I mean, it's going to stir up a little bit of energy, I promise you.
Oh, I'm excited about it. I think that this is a really important issue in our culture, and I'm glad that we get the opportunity to address it.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write this book?
You know what, Rachel? As I've traveled the country, as we've done a number of events, the one thing I've seen is a lot of discouragement in men. There's been a real beat down on men. Basically, if you look at culture and society, they paint them as buffoons, distant, disengaged, lazy, cold, porn addicts, bad husbands, terrible fathers. And they've just I think men have gotten a really bad rap. And now you add to it the whole piece on it's not just men, it's masculinity. Masculinity is toxic. You know that, and we need to fix men. We need to reprogram them. We basically need to wipe them out of off the landscape, really, and try to feminize them, change them. But nothing could be further from the truth when we really look at the research.
Yeah. Can you talk just a little bit about that? How culture has tried to feminize men? That's a really hot button right there.
You know, Rachel, I think there's a lot of pain out there when it relates to men. Let me say that. First of all, I think a lot of men have given themselves to toxic behavior. We know what it's like to be on the receiving end of someone's anger. We've heard it. We listen to it constantly. You know what it's like to hear stories from people who've been abused or hurt. Maybe had somebody scream at you. I tell a story a lot about a kid that I knew who was really aspiring to be a big league baseball player. And he's in college baseball, Rachel. He's in a big-time game, a lot on the line. He's batting in the 3-hole. He's third in the lineup. He swings it from the left side. He's got all kinds of pro potential. And in this game, I don't know what happened to him, but he took one strike. What that means is he just looked at it. He didn't swing. Took another strike, and then battled a little bit, but then went down on a called third strike looking. Out of nowhere, he hears this voice down the third base line screaming, saying, "Swing the stupid bat!" And who do you think it was? It was his dad. And that day, he took basically that bat and put it back and hung up his cleats and said he was never going to play again. And you know what else? It hurt him so much deep down inside that he wouldn't even let his son play. Now, Rachel, what I'm trying to say here is there are a lot of people out there, a lot of men who have grown up in brokenness and been on the receiving end of a lot of toxic behavior.
Yeah.
Okay? But that doesn't mean masculinity is bad.
Right.
You hear what I'm saying? You can't infuse the two of them together. But here's what's happened. Because society and culture and even the American Psychological Association has merged these two, it's let's scrub it out. Let's try to dismiss any qualities of manhood, and let's try to change that wiring, if you will, and let's soften them up. Let's tend to them up. And I want to talk a lot about that in a moment, Rachel, because I think a man who is a man is in touch with his feelings. He is tender. He knows how to love and be loved and more. You know that?
Yeah.
But that's a little bit of what we're talking about here. And it's just a difficult road right now. It's an important road for us to come back and bring a message of hope and encouragement and healing to the hearts of men. We need men to step up into this moment. And the truth is,
Mhm.
Rachel, a lot of women want their men to do that very thing.
Mhm. So, I think something that's just really been heightened in the media right now is delineating gender from sex, right? That
Yeah.
a male sexed person and a female sexed person is not the same as masculinity or femininity, and that masculinity and femininity are interchangeable and that they are available for perception, right? Like when you talk about reclaiming masculinity, that's a big deal. So, would you maybe flesh apart a couple of those pieces? And while you're doing that, you started it right there when you said being masculine doesn't mean that you're not sensitive. It doesn't mean that you're not caring, that you're not loving. I think that some of the toxic parts or the bad rap that masculinity has gotten has said don't be sensitive, don't have an open heart, don't be gentle. And how can we have the both and?
Yeah. Well, I think let's start with some research first of all.
Okay. Yeah.
It's interesting. There's a lot of good news out there when it comes to men and masculinity. 92% of Americans believe that men or dads make a unique contribution to their son and or daughter's life. In other words, they would say it this way: they have a profound influence on them. Let me give you some examples. While involved mothers can help stave off a teen's sexual activity, here's what the research shows: a dad has 2 times the influence.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, and Meg Meeker, who is a good friend of all of ours, Meg says that 76% of teen girls said their dad influenced their decision on whether or not to be sexually active
That's so
before marriage.
powerful.
Now, think about that. In addition, here's what we're finding: fatherless daughters are over 90% more likely to fail in their own marriages.
Mm.
Think about that. Do dads matter? Do men matter? I'm telling you, when I look in the eyes of men and just come back and say, listen to me, you have no idea how significant, how important you really are. And
Mhm.
here's the goal here: let's harness this thing for good. We know this when, and everybody knows that our boys are in trouble. You know that? And we talk about parenting and
Yeah.
raising boys. There's something unique about boys. They got a dynamic in them that's wired. Um, a lot of what needs to be done, and that is to help boys, for example, manage their testosterone, that craziness stuff that they do, like skateboarding out of, wildly, or rock climbing, or
Mhm. Mhm.
driving a car fast down the highway, or whatever it is, harnessing all that energy. It's
Right.
interesting that a dad is really important in the development of a boy. Okay. And what are the 2 critical periods in life? We've learned through development studies that preschool and puberty are critical areas where boys need that kind of investment and attention. Let me stop right here too, Rachel, because I think you and I'd agree with this. This isn't an indictment against women. This is not an anti-women program at all. If
Mm.
anything, this is positive. And by the way, this is a positive statement about single parent moms who step up, who try to fill in the gap here. You
I
know
love that
that
you said that because I'm thinking I'm a single mom and my heart is aching without my husband. So I'm going to ask you, what can single moms do? So keep going, but I'm excited that you're headed this direction.
Well, I mean, the challenge is that the kids need that masculine, that dad piece in their life.
Mhm.
And let me say this too. Here's an Allie Beth Stuckey piece that I found, and I thought this is really perfect. She wrote this: if masculinity were toxic, then kids growing up without dads would presumably be better off than those who have them.
Hmm.
But they're not.
Wow.
They tend to be more depressed, aggressive, and criminal. Here's what she's saying, and if you look at research from the National Center on Fathering and others, when a dad is emotionally present and engaged with his kids, Rachel, there's a dynamic that changes the equation in terms of their outcome. Let's just call them more healthy kids just for a second. It
Okay.
means these kids do better in terms of academic performance. They do better in their male and female identities. They're less prone, for example, to peer pressure. They're less prone to have mental health disorders and more.
Mm.
When dad is absent and not present, not engaged in the life of his son and or daughter, here's what we know, Rachel, it goes the opposite way. More prone to substance abuse, more prone to peer pressure, more prone to have mental health disorders, and on the list goes. They do much more poor academically.
Mm-hmm.
The one common denominator we're learning about death row, when Allie Beth Stuckey referenced more criminal, the number one common denominator on death row, no dad.
Wow.
No dad. So don't tell me that dads don't matter. Don't tell me men don't matter. You can look at the research for good and bad, whether he's engaged or not engaged. It matters. Here it is, straight up stuff. And now, of course, we've got to figure out what does that mean and how do we step into this moment. And you're right. For example, with single parent moms, we could spend a whole show on that. But let me say this.
Yeah.
I high five any mom who tries to do everything she can to help fill that gap. But
Mm-hmm.
listen, your son, your daughter, they need male influence. Get it in there. I don't care if it's grandpa, brother,
Mm-hmm.
uncle, youth pastor, somebody. Start speaking to it. And really, it comes out of James chapter 1. When James taught this, that pure religion before the Father is to visit the widows and the orphans in their
Mm-hmm.
affliction and to keep ourselves unspotted from the world, the church needs to engage. And
Mm-hmm.
we're finding that men want to step up and do this kind of activities. Rachel, we just got to push them and nudge them in that kind of a direction.
So I'm hearing you say that for those single moms like me who are listening, we don't have to feel hopeless, but that the masculine influence of family and friends and church and community members can fill some of those gaps for our kids.
Absolutely, 100%. And let me say something very carefully here, too, Rachel, to all the single parent moms out there. Frank Pollack found this in his research on divorce, or let's just say kids growing up in a home without a dad,
Mm-hmm.
that divorce is devastating to all kids. And he went on to say this, especially boys. This is important. He said the challenge here is that 80% of the time, these boys, for example, and boys and girls both need this influence, but he was specific here for a moment, are spending their time with women, okay? Unfortunately, often who hate the males in their life, like their dad,
Mm.
because there's brokenness. You got to be so careful here. And if,
Passing that down.
yeah, and Rachel, if a statement comes back and says, you're just like your father,
Mm-hmm.
what that does to his heart. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or if he hears you beating up that dad all the time, what does he begin to assume about himself here?
Yeah. Sense of worthlessness.
Yeah, and so it's very complicated. We need to be
Mm-hmm.
sensitive here. We need to figure this piece out and how to give the gift of love. In parenting, there's a new word out that I like a lot. It's called attunement.
Mm-hmm.
And to be attuned to your son and or daughter, where they're at, what they're going through, not where you're at, what you're going through, but where they're at and what they're going through. We need to be sensitive to that.
Yeah. That emotional availability for our kids is a
Yeah.
game changer when it comes to developing their emotional intelligence and their future relational success.
Yes.
Okay, so you're combating the message that the male is just the sperm donor in the family unit, right? You're coming up against that. And you're saying that masculinity in the home is not only important, but it's crucial for development and for future outcomes. So, what are the dads who are making a difference in their home doing well?
Well, it's interesting. Let me highlight a piece of research we found out also. And again, my people perish because of a lack of knowledge. A lot of men get lost in the way here. I'm not excusing them.
Mm,
I'm not excusing them. I'm challenging them. Hear me. When it comes to spiritual influence, for example, Dad, you matter. Okay, this is a piece that was published, I think, in the Baptist Press, or they shared an article. It was related to Promise Keepers. But here's what they found. They found if a child becomes a Christian first in the family, there's about a 3.5% chance that the family will follow.
okay.
Rachel, here's what they found. If mom comes to Christ first in a family, there's about a 17% chance that the family will follow, that everyone will follow. Here's what's wild. They found if a dad is first to come to Christ, there's a 93% chance that everyone in the family will follow.
That's a powerful statistic.
Yeah, that's like a jaw dropper. That's like a stop you in your track statement. Wait a second. No, and when I look at men in an audience for a moment, don't tell me that you don't matter, that you don't have influence. Or better than that, let me say this. Hashtag own your influence.
Mm.
You need to step up. Can you imagine what would happen right now, Rachel, if men would step up and into this moment and take their rightful place
It
in
would
their
be
families?
transformative.
Yeah, in their families, in the church, in the communities, in the nation, and more.
Mm.
Step up into this moment. Here's some good news. We're learning that younger dads, for example, are doing that. A lot of them grew up without a dad. We've had a very broken culture, and they didn't learn how to be a dad. But they're saying, not in my house. The youth sports, they're saying, you aren't getting in this end zone. We're not doing
Mm.
this. I'm not repeating that. I'm not putting my kids through what I went through. I
Yeah.
remember a story, Rachel, of a really well-known Christian leader. He and I were seated in a restaurant, in a restaurant in a big hotel in Nashville.
Okay.
Just the 2 of us alone. There wasn't anybody else in the restaurant. We started talking about, his life growing up, and I asked him about his dad, and it was like something came over him. His face, his whole countenance. He leaned in toward me, and he said, "Tim, my dad never even played one game of catch with me."
Mm.
Then he said this, "My dad never even taught me how to shave. He was out saving the world." He said, "You know how long it took me to realize it wasn't me? That it was something inside my dad and what he went through?" I said, "What
Mhm.
do you mean?" He said, "Tim, listen, mm, I realized that he grew up with a broken family situation where his dad hated him. That didn't excuse my dad for how he treated me, but I
Mm.
began to see differently. I
Mhm.
responded differently." Are you following me here?
Yeah, that identity piece, I think that that is one of the core tenets of masculinity that is brought into the father relationship.
Yeah,
And when men don't have it, we can't give what we don't have. And so, I think Dr. Dobson has said that it's easier to raise a child than fix an adult, right? And
yeah,
so when we're trying to interrupt this generational cycle and get involved in this meaningful way, and really, I mean, it's you see it everywhere, right? You see it in the media, you see it on the news, you're seeing it in our little leagues everywhere, where it's like, not do we only want a more sensitive man, but we want a man that does not take ownership of his inherent strength. And when we talk about just the way men and women are made, right?
yeah,
Pound for pound, men are 70% more muscle, or they have 30% more muscle than women. And just in that inherent design, right? Just right off the bat, that they are gifted and equipped to carry that for their family and to protect them in that way. And so it's like we're asking them to lay down a core tenet of who they are.
yeah. I often think about my own dad. My dad was a World War II veteran, served on the USS Pennsylvania in the South Pacific as a kid, basically. Went straight out of high school. When the war was over, he came back. Rachel, he said he kissed the ground. He
Hmm.
was so happy to get back in the
Hmm.
States. Told God that he would serve him for the rest of his life. He became a pastor. My dad was a strong man in what he believed, but I often described him as the kindest man I've ever met. My
Hmm.
dad never raised his voice to me. I don't ever remember my dad yelling at me, ever. What I do remember was him calling me pretty much every night my whole life, praying with me.
I love that.
I remember my dad taking us out, and one of the things we loved to do was get out in the woods together. He loved to hunt and fish, but it wasn't about hunting and fishing. It was just about being together. It was our way of connecting, and we
Hmm.
talked in our own language. That's that old country music song where she thinks we're just fishing.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's so much going on there. But my dad, Rachel, I remember the day my dad died. When I was 7 years old, I had an experience. I thought my dad was going to die. And I begged God for 2 days to save his life. He had tested positive for a TB test. I didn't know what that meant, so I went into the library as a kid, read about TB, and thought, oh my goodness, he's dead. And I cried to God every night in the bed, those 2 nights. And then finally, I understood he was going to be okay. But I remember worrying about that day coming. And I remember the day that my dad died. Rachel, I drove to the hospital. My younger brother called me and said, Tim, you got to get here fast. And I remember pulling into the hospital and putting the truck up into park and saying, God, this is that day, isn't it?
Mm.
And as I sat there for a moment, all I heard God say to me was, run, Tim, run. And I took off running up to that room, Rachel, and I burst the door open. I ran in and grabbed the hand of the man who loved me, who raised me, who told me things like, Tim, it's because of him, meaning because of God, Christ, that I would see him again. And I prayed Psalm 23 over him, and I left there after my dad passed. Went home to my own 2 children, Megan and Zach. Walked in and I said, Papa C's gone. He's gone to heaven. And I wept with them, and I said, listen, if I can be half the man, half the dad that he was to me, to you, I promise you'll be blessed, and I'll do everything I got to be that. I just want to be that kind of a man. And I believe that's what David was trying to tell Solomon in his last address. I don't know if you've ever read that piece on
I don't
David
know if
to
I
Solomon.
have. Yeah, will you remind us?
Yeah, it's in the Bible there. And David is saying to Solomon, listen, Solomon, there's so much that you need to know. But he said this, show yourself a man. And I thought, what does that really mean? And we studied it. And I began to realize it wasn't be strong and make sure your bench press is at 300 pounds.
I mean, we're not mad if you can do that, but that's not the point.
Yeah, it's not, stay in shape and all that kind of stuff, and it's not, can you arm wrestle well? And nah. What he was saying was he knew that it meant following after the ways of God, after being a man after God's own heart, because that was the character piece that was going to matter if he was going to lead the children of Israel well. And when Paul in the New Testament said, act like men, I think Paul was saying the exact same thing to us. And who's our model man? Our model man is Christ himself. Christ in all of his ways. To be Christ-like is what the great challenge is here as men.
Tim, this is really powerful. I feel like I could take this in so many directions. Just my own daughter's heart for a father, and my own story growing up and not feeling emotionally connected with my dad, and how that played out in my choice to have an abortion when I was 18, and just many of the pain points that I experienced from having that lack of direction. I'm thinking about my children who, lost their dad at 7. When you said, you were so afraid that you were going to lose your dad that day, my children begged God not to let him take their daddy, and he did, and he went to heaven. And so I am just, man, my heart is wide open right now, and I can only imagine for the listeners, would it be okay if we pick this up in part 2 of this episode? Because I don't think I can be done yet with this interview.
I'd be honored to.
Thank you so much. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Hopecast. If this is connecting for you, would you share it? Would you rate, subscribe, and review? That helps us get this message of hope out to more people. Everybody have a great day, and check in for part 2 of my interview with Dr. Tim Clinton on his book, Take It Back, Reclaiming Biblical Masculinity, the Heart and Strength of Being a Man.
You've been listening to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. To find out more, go to rachaelflick.com. While you're there, you can book Rachael for your next speaking engagement. Her inspiring message will be sure to engage and touch the heart of your audience at your next conference, church event, or business function. Go to rachaelflick.com to book her today. While you're online, you can discover more information about all of the platforms that this podcast is on. Also, be sure to click on the social media icons at the top of the page, and you will be directed to Rachael's social media sites. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate if you would subscribe and leave us a review. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.